All right, so as you can tell by the title, I'm going to talk to you today about music because there are few things that have as powerful an impact on the formation of our character as music. It forms who we are, and it also forms society around us. So it's good to know what it is, where it came from, and how it can affect us. So that's what I want to talk to you about today. Is first of all how powerful music is, and people from past ages have known how powerful music is. And then how it developed through the ages, specifically how it developed from in the 19th century on, so how we get modern music. And then I'll show what its effect can be on us, personally and as a whole. And then some antidotes, some solutions, ways to fix falling into listening to modern music all the time. So that's what we're going to get through today. So it is powerful stuff, and this was realized even before the time of Christ. Aristotle said, "Emotions of any kind are produced by melody and rhythm. Therefore, by music, a man becomes accustomed to feeling the right emotions. Music has thus the power to form character, and the various kinds of music, based on various modes, may be distinguished by their effects on character." So it affects our emotions, and this was realized even before the time of Christ. Boethius, 500 years after Christ, said something similar. Music can both establish and destroy morality, for no path is more open to the soul for the formation thereof than through the ears. Therefore, when the rhythms and modes have penetrated even to the soul through these organs, it cannot be doubted that they affect the soul with their own character and conform it to themselves. So more than the emotions now, it goes into our soul. And that's why it has such a powerful impact on our character, is that music has the ability to go into our very soul. In more recent times, 1850, Henry David Thoreau said, "Music can be intoxicating. Such apparently slight causes destroyed Greece and Rome, and will destroy England and America. So it can make you do things that you never thought you could do or never wanted to do." Cyril Scott, who was a British composer in 1950, said, "An innovation in musical style has invariably been followed by an innovation in politics and morals. And what is more, the decline of music in Egypt and Greece was followed by the complete decline of the Egyptian and Grecian civilizations themselves." So they began to realize that not only can it affect characters, personal characters, but it can affect an entire culture, an entire society or civilization, and either raise it up or bring it down. So they realized the power of music, and today we realize the power of music. It can be used for good, and it can be used for evil. Good. We praise God through song. The songs that we've been singing in the chapel this week have been praising God through our songs. And there's countless examples in the New Testament and the Old Testament, especially in the book of Psalms, where David writes these canticles to God. And whenever the chosen people would gain a victory over their enemies, or whenever they saw the blessings of God, they would praise God through canticles. So in the Old and New Testament alike, we see examples of praising God through song. So that's its good use, and that it's a gift from God meant to be that way. Above the human, even spirits use music. The angels in heaven use music, and that's part of the eternal bliss of heaven, is that we get to listen to the angels singing and all the blessed in heaven singing. We'll all have fantastic voices when we get to heaven, and that's part of the joys of eternity. On the flip side, the spirits in hell, the demons, are also capable of music, which is one of the tortures of hell. The din and chaos that the demons make through their own form of music is one of the tortures of hell. So there's music in heaven and hell and on earth. Every culture, every time period has its own form of music. You can usually recognize the different forms of music and the time periods they came from or the cultures they came from. So there's all these different kinds of music. And today, especially with the innovations in technology, music is everywhere. No matter where you go, it's rare not to hear music. Whether you like it or not, music is all around us. And so it's very hard to get away from the evil influences of music and hard to strive for the good influences of music. So that because the evil influences are more prevalent today, that's what I want to talk about, and where it came from, and what it can do to us. So it can be used for good, but can also be used for evil. So we're going to talk about where it came from. How did we get to music of the Middle Ages to the music of today? We have to first start off with the New Age and what it is. And I'll just send out a caveat. If you ever look up the development of rock and roll through the ages, there's a lot of satanic influence, a lot of occultish influence. It's very dangerous to research, so just be careful on what you research and who you research. But I'll be giving a summary of that today. So with the New Age, that's where it stems from. The New Age is a way of looking at the universe. It is a pantheist system, meaning everything is God, which is built on the twin ideas of the interconnectedness of all things, so everything's connected, and the powers of the mind, which is promoting one world order, the unity of everything, but not the unity that we want, which is the unity under God, but a unity through the human mind. So the powers of the human mind are able to reach to the divine, and that's where your power comes from. So it's rejecting God, or rejecting God's dominion over everything, and rather using the powers of the mind to get to the divine. And this is done through different meditation techniques, on clearing ourselves of everything that's in our mind and trying to reach to the divine. However, if you're using those meditation techniques to reach to the divine without God, then which preternatural spirits are you reaching? But the demons. So those are the spirits that it's trying to reach. And that's why it's developed into the New Age of Satan. The unicorn is actually the symbol of the New Age. As well as being a symbol of Satan the Destroyer, the unicorn is symbolic of the Hindu god Shiva, the Destroyer. It is a pantheist picture of progress or evolution where the old is destroyed through the horn on the unicorn. The old is destroyed and new is rebuilt in the name of progress, change, evolution. So the old, we associate with the old tradition, morality, culture. That's the old that is destroyed by Shiva, or the unicorn, the New Age movement. And in comes evolution, or the theory of evolution, and the evolution of anything good. The change of anything from good to bad is now being promoted through the New Age movement. Now, this was picked up in the 19th century by the occult, by Satanists, who saw that the New Age movement would be a very powerful tool to bring Satan to the public, into society, in a more accessible way. So this happened in the 1800s, starting with Helena Petrovna Blavatsky. So there are three people of the New Age movement that I'm going to bring to the forefront, the main ones, and then I'll show how different music artists connected with these people. So Helena Petrovna Blavatsky lived from 1831 to 1891, and she was very much a leader in furthering the occult and bringing satanic thought and philosophy to the forefront. What was previously hidden away and not accessible, she now brought to the forefront through the New Age movement. Her writings greatly helped bring about this New Age movement, this New Age of Satan instead of our Lord. Why? Because through her writings, it was now easily accessible to learn how to get in touch with spirits, the demons, and now everybody could partake in it. She co-founded what was known as the Theosophical Society, the society dedicated to the work of Satan. It was influenced by Freemasonry, Buddhism, Hinduism, and Eastern mysticism, all groups that partake in accessing the spirits, the demons. According to the New Age Almanac, Madame Blavatsky stands out as the fountainhead of modern occult thought and was either the originator or popularizer of many of the ideas and terms which have a century later been assembled within the New Age movement. So she really got it started. The Theosophical Society, which she co-founded, has been the major advocate of occult philosophy or satanic philosophy in the West. So bring it from the East, China, India, Japan, over to the West, Europe and beyond, into America. And the single most important avenue of Eastern teaching to the West. So this is how people could get their hands on occultish thought. And she greatly influenced a man by the name of Aleister Crowley, and a name you may have heard of before. He's, of the three, he'll be the most well-known or the most famous. Aleister Crowley, who republished some of her writings and made it even more popular. Aleister Crowley, his self-appointed name, the name he gave himself, was the Beast 666. He was exiled from Italy and had to flee into Britain, and Britain realized what an evil man he was. He did things that were inhuman, things, a perverted lifestyle that you didn't think possible by humans, only by demons. And he was named by the British press the wickedest man in the world. He was raised a Christian, but when his father died, he was so angry with God that he would take away his father, that he said, I want nothing else to do with Christianity. He said, to hell with Christianity, I want blasphemy. So now I want to spend all the time and energy that people devote into serving God, I want to use that time and energy into serving Satan and being like an apostle to Satan. He said, I wanted to get hold of him, Satan, old blessed beast, personally and become his chief of staff. So again, what the apostles were to our Lord, that's what Aleister Crowley wanted to be for Satan. He was very much into the occult, which he furthered through both human and animal sacrifice. He was very much into drugs and impurity, into both fornication and a perverted lifestyle. He died in 1947. Now, before he died, he established what was called the Abbey of Thelema. The Abbey of Thelema, like we have monasteries and abbeys in the Catholic religion, but for him, this was his center to practice his depraved immorality with his followers, a few men and women who followed him to practice the occult rituals that he wanted to promote. And this was in the Abbey of Thelema. And at the Abbey of Thelema, he wrote what was called the Book of the Law, which was his book on the occult. Had a lot of writings from Madame Blavatsky, and then also his own thoughts on the occult and promoting satanic worship. And his main motto, the motto that he wanted to get out to the public was, do what thou wilt. That is the whole of the law. If he could get people to do what they wanted, that's the first step to rebellion against God. Because now you're not doing God's will, you're doing your own will. And who was the first to do that? But Satan. And so that's the first step into occultish worship, is do what thou wilt. Away from God, now you're doing what you want. The third person, so we have Madame Blavatsky, Aleister Crowley. The third person is Anton LaVey, and he is the founder of the Church of Satan. He also led a life of very degraded immorality, and that's why it's dangerous to look these people up, is because their lives are so inhuman, so satanic, that it's disgusting to look them up. He was the author of the Satanic Bible, and there's an important quote in his Satanic Bible, is that Satan always has the best music. And according to Satan, the demons, and the people that follow Satan, that's absolutely correct. Is that for them, Satan always has the best music. But this was their major avenue, the major means now of promoting New World Order, was now music. Music would be their avenue through which they could further the occult into mainstream media and mainstream society. So that's the most powerful tool they knew, was music, and that's how they were going to further the worship of Satan and the occult on small scales and on a large scale. So now we get into the artists, or the main followers of these people, especially Aleister Crowley. First person, rock artist of the 50s, or made rock and roll popular, would be Elvis Presley. Elvis Presley lived from 1935 to 1977. You probably know he was a twin, but his twin died at birth. He was raised a Christian and then eventually died in his home in Graceland due to heart failure, due to his drug addiction. As you may also know, he led a very impure and immoral life. In the book Elvis by Albert Harry Goldman, who was a very close follower of Elvis and traveled with one of his bodyguards, he said Elvis traveled with a portable bookcase containing over 200 volumes of his favorite books, wherever he went. The books most commonly associated with him were books promoting pagan religions, and the main one was Madame Blavatsky. He read a lot of Blavatsky's writings on how to get in touch with spirits, mainly or primarily to get in touch with his twin brother, see if he could get in touch with him through these spirits. But as he admitted, these spirits tormented him throughout his entire life. It didn't just end there. He was tormented all throughout his life, something that he admitted. We move on to the most popular band of the 60s, probably of all time, the Beatles. The Beatles, yes. Well, many of their songs, not all of their songs, but many of their songs reflect Crowley's motto, do what you want. And this was the start of pop music. And we'll get into pop music. Doing what you want, do what thou wilt. That's the first step towards rebellion, and that's the motto that the New Age and the occult want to get into mainstream media. And John Lennon said, songwriting is like being possessed. It's a psychic or a medium. I'm not acting. Someone seems to come over me when I'm writing music and put those words on paper through me. Yoko Ono, who was Lennon's second wife or mistress, went down to South America, and this is in John Lennon's own book. Yoko Ono went down to South America there to make a pact with Satan through a witch who would perform the spell. Make a pact with Satan for $60,000 to sell John Lennon's soul to the devil for the success of his career. And we know how that went over. He's one of the most popular song artists of all times, John Lennon. And that's in his own book, Sold his soul to the devil for $60,000. And a quote by John Lennon was, Christianity will go, it will vanish and shrink. We're more popular than Jesus right now. And that's what they want. If they can get people to do what they want, then Christianity obviously has to go to the side, because now it's the devil coming through and not God. One of their songs, not all their songs are evil or have this motto, do what thou wilt. But I'll show you one of their songs, which you may have heard. It's called My Sweet Lord. And just from the beginning, it's something that you may even find in a hymnal today. It has these words that seem to be pointed to our Lord. And in between each line, they sing Alleluia. But the second half of the song, those Alleluias switch to Hare Krishna in similar words. So the first part of the song, okay, maybe not all hymnals. Okay, that's the first part of the song. Something that's rhythmic, something that says Alleluia in between. But in the second part of the song, those Alleluias switch. So what are these? These phrases that Alleluia is changed to what are called mantras, or these short phrases that are used in Buddhism and Eastern mysticism to call down spirits. So if they can get people to sing the song, then the Alleluia is easily changing into mantras. They'll be able to call down the spirits, call down these demons, and that's what the purpose is for. Their most popular album is the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And on that album cover, they promote the work of 58 celebrities who, if they were still living, they contacted these celebrities saying, we want to be associated with you. Can we have you on our album? And they said, most of them said yes. And if they were already passed away, they would put the artist on the cover to say, these are the people that we want to emulate. And on this, they have Aleister Crowley. He's in the top left, second from the left. They also have Karl Marx as one of the main influences behind their music, Marilyn Monroe, several teachers of Eastern mysticism, many active media promoters of degraded impurity and immorality at that time period. So these are the people that they want to associate with and the works that they want to promote. The next group, who is not as famous but still well known, is The Doors. Jim Morrison and The Doors. Jim Morrison was the lead singer, very much into drugs and alcohol, and he died at the young age of 27. He followed the maxims of Aleister Crowley and do what you want, and a lot of their songs portray that, do what thou wilt. He heard spirits that haunted him throughout his life, and that's what he admitted to. And before concerts, in the very medical sense of the term, he was a retard, where he just couldn't act normally. So in order for him to get ready for a concert, they'd play what are known as voodoo beats, which are beats used by tribes to call down spirits. And they would play this for 30, 40, 50 minutes to get him into a rage, and then he'd go on stage and be able to perform. And sometimes during his concerts, you'd hear different voices. His voice would change, and the YouTube, it is on YouTube, so the link is, I won't play now, we don't have YouTube. But there is evidence on videos on YouTube where his voice changes, and there's also screams coming out of the microphone, where his mouth is closed, or he's not saying anything, but there's still screams coming out of the microphone during live concert. So that's Jim Morrison, follower of Aleister Crowley. The Beach Boys, Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys, right? A fun group. Brian Wilson formed the Beach Boys in 1961. He suffered from substance abuse, which led to a mental illness. He was also, in the medical sense of the term, almost a retard, where he just couldn't act normally. He was tormented throughout his life, as he admitted. Rolling Stone magazine reported that while interviewing him, he became possessed. So his eyes rolled back and he started shaking violently while they were interviewing him. And that's not a Catholic magazine, that's Rolling Stone magazine. Warner Brothers Records said that there were at least 5 different personalities in this person, Brian Wilson, that you never knew who you were going to get during an interview because it seemed like different people would come out of him. The Beach Boys themselves were very much into Eastern mysticism or the New Age movement and trying to reach the divine through meditation techniques. And a lot of their songs follow the motto, "Do what thou wilt." The next one, most popular rock band, probably, would be the Led Zeppelin band, the supreme rock band of the 1970s, and maybe of all time. Their lead guitarist was Jimmy Page, and he financed his own occult bookstore known as the Equinox, which was named after Aleister Crowley's journal by the same name, the Equinox. And he was such a fanatic follower of Aleister Crowley, Jimmy Page, that he even bought Aleister Crowley's house after he died, his mansion, which was Boleskine House. And people who lived in that area stayed away from that house because they said that at nighttime the whole patio would be filled with ghosts and demons, and you can see shadows and outlines of ghosts as you pass that house. So needless to say, Jimmy Page didn't spend too much time there, but it was his house. A lot of their albums include Crowley's magic phrases, especially "Do What Thou Wilt." So if you take one of the Led Zeppelin band albums, on the inner ring you'll often see his magic phrases, "Do what thou wilt," or some other one of his phrases. The most popular song of all time, probably, or at least one of the most popular songs of all time, right? "Stairway to Heaven," was written by Robert Plant. And Robert Plant said the lyrics seem to just come automatically. And these lyrics, they aren't much to write home about. But then we get into what's called backwards playing. And this was a common technique used by Satanists, to give messages to each other. So forward, and these are lyrics that just came to him automatically, he said the pen seemed to move on its own. Forward says, "And she's buying a stairway to heaven. When she gets there, she knows, oh, 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 and she's buying a stairway to heaven," which is nothing too deep about that. But backwards, so if you were to take your finger on the record and now go backwards with the record, here's what you'd hear. And this was put out by someone who was very proud of the fact that Robert Plant and the Led Zeppelin band was able to give such a message, a powerful satanic message, almost accidentally, without even knowing it. This is the message they were able to put out. Another artist around the same time, Jimi Hendrix, one of the most famous guitarists, one of the best guitarists of all time, did things with the guitar that nobody else could do, including. He would sacrifice his guitar on stage, and he would go into a rage in a fit of passion, and then he'd smash his guitar and light it with gasoline and a match and start bowing down to it on stage during one of his concerts. This is a clip from one of his concerts. But a lot of these artists, not just the ones I've mentioned, but a lot of these artists refer back to Aleister Crowley and the New Age movement, where Ozzy Osbourne, he has a song, "Mr. Crowley," that's Aleister Crowley. The Rolling Stones, their number one song is "Sympathy for the Devil." The Police, Black Sabbath, a lot of these bands have that motto, "Do what thou wilt," which is the first step towards occultish worship, or the first step towards the New Age of Satan. Now, how does this pertain to us. We've talked about different rock artists who are into drugs. Well, say if I stay away from drugs, maybe it doesn't affect me. But the music itself, it portrays a message that these artists want you to take home with you. So it affects everyone. There's different kinds of music. We just talked about rock and roll and the music that type of music puts out. There's also heavy metal, which is lyrics are often explicit and violent. The beats, those are the voodoo beats, often used in heavy metal to call down demons. There's rap music, which is often very explicit on immorality, very violent and impure. And even if it's meant to portray a good message, let's say rap artists are saying, well, no, I'm putting a good message through my rap. It's the music genre itself that disposes the soul towards vice. It doesn't depend so much on the lyrics as the form of music. Rap in and of itself pushes the passions in ways that other forms of music don't. And so that type of music in and of itself disposes the soul towards vice. There's also pop music. And very often, do what thou wilt, do what you want, do this, be free. A lot of the license, right, in pop music that these artists portray in their music lyrics. One of these artists listed on the slide put out a music video for their song that was not only pornographic, but shows step by step an occult ritual, how to perform sacrifices to Satan. That was in one of their music videos. Beyonce said, I have someone else that takes over when it's time for me to work and when I'm on stage. This alter ego, who she named Sasha, that I've created that kind of protects me and who I really am. And that was all the way back in 2008. And she said, I have no problems in going up on stage and throwing my body around because I know that Sasha will protect me. And she was so dedicated to this other person, Sasha, that she dedicated a whole tour to Sasha. Miley Cyrus also has many allusions to animals, especially the unicorn in her music and music videos, and other symbols that represent the devil in her music videos and her music covers. Also, even the New Age also found a little pathway into country, which can be sensual and impure. That motto of do what you want, where I am free now and I can do what I want and not what's right. So even country has taste of the occult, of the New Age movement in it. So all these different forms of music have this influence now from the main promoters of the New Age movement. Now, how did these different forms of music affect us? Well, let's first start with rats, because it was tested on rats a few years ago. This 16-year-old actually did it for a high school project down in Virginia, where he took 72 rats and sent them through a maze. And in this maze, it took him an average of about 10 minutes to get through it. And then he divided them up into 3 groups. One would listen to no music at all. Another group would listen to classical music. And then another group would listen to hard rock and heavy metal, each for 10 hours a day. And then he'd send them through the maze again to see if it actually affected their mentality. And so when he sent them through, the group that didn't listen to any music cut their time in half down to 5 minutes. The group that listened to classical music cut their time down to 1.5 minutes to go through the maze. And then at the end of the 3 weeks, the group that listened to hard rock and heavy metal increased their time to 30 minutes. And after he got them all together again, the group that listened to heavy metal and rock music started eating each other. So he had to take them away and kill them, because they started eating each other and biting, but not the ones that listen to classical music or the ones that listen to no music at all. Now, you might say, well, that's rats, we're different. Well, let's go to people. This is from the American Academy of Pediatrics. We're talking about doctors here, people who, we're not even delving into the spiritual yet. These are just people who are concerned about your physical and mental well-being. And they put out a study called The Impact of Music, Music Lyrics, and Music Videos on Children and Youth. And this was put out about 10 years ago. And they cite over 100 sources in doing their research. So their introduction is music plays an important role in the socialization of children and adolescents. Research on popular music has explored its effects on schoolwork, social interactions, mood and affect, and particularly behavior. Lyrics have become more explicit in the references to drugs, impurity, and violence over the years, particularly in certain genres. As with pop music, the perception and the effect of music video messages are important, because research has reported that exposure to violence, impure messages, impure stereotypes, and substance abuse in music videos might produce significant changes in behaviors and attitudes of young adults. Furthermore, with the evidence portrayed in these studies, it is essential for pediatricians and parents to take a stand regarding music lyrics. So that's how they open their paper. And what are the findings in their studies? Well, it starts like this. Female adolescents are more likely than male adolescents to use music to reflect their emotional state, in particular when feeling lonely or down. Male adolescents, on the other hand, are more likely to use music as a stimulant to boost their energy level, to create a more positive image of themselves. A survey in the 1990s, so over 20 years ago, of 2,760 American adolescents ages 14 through 16 revealed that they listened to music on average of 40 hours per week, and this was 25 years ago. Lyrics have become more explicit in the references to drugs, impurity, and violence over the years. A content analysis of the top 10 CDs performed by the National Institute on Media in 1999, 20 years ago, revealed that each of these CDs included at least one song with impure content. 42% of the songs on these CDs contained very explicit impure content. Lyrics of some music genres, such as rock, heavy metal, and rap, have been found to revolve around topics such as impurity, death, homicide, suicide, and substance abuse. Most recently, some rap music has been characterized by the presence of explicit impure language in its lyrics, as well as messages of violence, racism, and hatred towards women. Drugs, tobacco, alcohol use also tend to be glorified in these genres of music. Heavy metal and some rock music have been associated in some studies with increased risk of suicide. Fans of heavy metal music have been repeated in this literature to have more problems with school authorities and teachers than students who are not fans of these types of music. Heavy metal music listening has also been associated with increased depression, delinquency risk behavior, smoking, and conduct problems. Fans of heavy metal music and rap music showed a greater tendency to engage in reckless behavior than their peers who were not fans of these types of music. In a study of which adolescents who preferred heavy metal and rap were compared with those who preferred other types of music, indicated that the former, heavy metal and rap, showed below average current and elementary school grades with a history of counseling in elementary school for academic problems. Research related to music and its effects on children and adolescents has been expanded into another expression of pop music, the music video, and this was when it was just coming out. A study in 1997 revealed that the percentage of violence in music videos ranged from 11% to 22%. This was in 1997, with the most violent rap videos being presented in rap videos and closely followed by hard rock videos. In studies performed to assess the reaction of young males exposed to violent rap music videos or impure videos, participants reported an increased probability that they would engage in violence, a greater acceptance of the use of violence, and a greater acceptance of abuse of women than did participants who were not exposed to these kinds of videos. So those are the findings by doctors, by people who are just concerned about our physical and mental health. We haven't even delved into the spiritual realm yet, and these are the dangers that they lay before adolescents, around 14 to 16 teenagers, who are expose themselves to this kind of music. So what can we do? How can we prevent ourselves from going down this very slippery slope? Well, it's something that first of all needs to be taken seriously. When we just allow ourselves to listen to all different kinds of music 24/7 and there's no self-control, then yes, we're going to delve into the bad kinds of music. It's something that's serious. It's something where we do need guidance, especially at a young age. We need help because it's not something that we have the experience or the control over yet to prevent ourselves from listening or from exposing ourselves to that bad music, especially when it's so prevalent today. when you can't go anywhere without being exposed to this kind of music. Self-control is strength. If you're able to control yourself, then you're able to gain strength in order to overcome the temptations from these different kinds of music. And it's something that, again, you have to take seriously because it's the difference between angelic inspiration versus demonic possession. People have become possessed by listening to music. So there are other options available. There's, first of all, sacred music. And it's something that we have to listen to, have to have some exposure to, because it's part of our heritage. It's some of the best music of the ages. And we practice sacred music here on earth because it's something that we hope to continue for all eternity. There's only two choices, either the music of the demons or the music of the angels for all eternity. So we want to practice here on earth what we hope to be doing in heaven. There's also classical music, which comes from centuries of music, and some of the greatest minds of all time in the music world come in the classical genre. It's natural, it's soothing, it's peaceful. However, not everyone can listen to a lot of classical music, which is why you want to switch it up. But these are the different kinds of music that you want to expose yourself to. Folk music is part of our culture, part of our history. Every different culture that you come from has its own form of music, and you want to expose yourself to that because music is supposed to be something that's not just emotional, but also intellectual. So folk music would be something that's enjoyable and still moral. Do you know any of these? These are types of songs that, according to the National Association for Music Education, you should, that people around your age and our age should know. Sea shanties, railroad songs, spirituals, Civil War songs, patriotic songs, songs about the states, work songs, cowboy songs from the Old West, bluegrass. These are types of songs that they expect people around your age to know. Do you know these? Or are you listening to music that is more on the emotional state? I'll take questions after. Another antidote would be march music, which is a very disciplined form of music. It's good for guys to become exposed to a militaristic form of music. King of Marches, John Philip Sousa, and a lot of his marches, just to show you the discipline behind march music, he had 3 strains, and in the 3rd strain, or the trio of the song, there would be a melody and also a counter melody. So 2 melodies going at the same time that harmonize with one another. So it's a very disciplined form of music, march music. There's also soundtrack music, which is non-lyrical. It's associated with stories. Great soundtrack. Very enjoyable, and there's a wide variety. So there's soundtrack music for every taste. So that's good to have as an antidote against modern music. But modern music, there is also good music. Search with caution, but you will find clean music out there. Artists that you may enjoy and will find clean are these following artists here. And there are other artists, but I just put a few as an example. There are artists out there that put out clean music with good messages. You have to find music that's enjoyable and not immoral. Enjoyable and not immoral, because once it becomes immoral, then it's the do what thou wilt. The occult is now coming into that form. The New Age movement is coming into that form of music. So you have to ask yourself, what is the inspiration behind this song? What's the inspiration behind this artist writing this music? Is it for good or is it for evil? Because it's not something that they just wrote down on a scrap piece of paper and sent out to their publishers. There's a message behind their music, either for good or for bad. You can also do as a certain litmus test, who would like it better? If Aleister Crowley was listening to that music, would he like it? Or if St. John Bosco was listening to it, would he like it? So someone who loves Satan, Aleister Crowley, or someone who worked his whole life for God, would he like it? Do a litmus test on who would also be listening to this music. So you need music that elevates you. You need music with good messages. And for instance, the piano guys put out a good message at the end of their music videos usually.
Yeah, for us in our own lives, that happiness has come from following the teachings of Jesus Christ, holding family extra close, and loving others more than ourselves.
So you need music with good messages behind it, artists that have good inspirations to the work that they're doing for their livelihood. You need music that elevates you and does not drag you down. The dignity and respect for others should never be lost when listening to music. If you feel that you have more trouble respecting authority, more trouble obeying, look to the music that you're listening to, and you'll often find the cause of your problems. You also need to have self-control. Self-control is probably the most important aspect of guiding yourself towards the good and steering yourself away from the bad. If you listen to music all the time, then yes, there's only so much music out there. You're going to delve into the bad music. You're going to expose yourself to the music of the culture, the music, the rap music, the heavy metal music that just brings you down, because that's the that's what it wants to do. And that's what the artists of that music want to do. They have no intent of saving your soul. So in conclusion, you have to realize that this is very powerful, that music is something that's above our nature, something used by angels and demons alike as a tool to get us to be disposed to either virtue or vice. So you have to realize that it's very powerful. The music of today, yes, is very powerful, but it's influenced by the demons. It's influenced by occultish thought, especially Aleister Crowley and the New Age movement of Satan, and furthering the message of the occult. So you have to be very careful on the music of today. Whether you think so or not, music does affect you. Music forms your character. It's one of the most powerful influences on your character, music. So you have to pay strict attention on the music that you're listening to. You do have to have your own filtering process on good music and bad music. So resist the temptations of bad music, and it is a very strong temptation. We all know that. And enjoy the good music. Enjoy something that's moral. So it's a gift from God given to us creatures. Do not abuse it, but use it for His greater glory. It's a gift that God gave us so that we could reach heaven. So use music well. Thank you for your time.